Welcome to Purdue Basketball Beat. I believe, is this the first one? This is the second one of the new year.
This
Isn't it?
is I to me we've been doing this twice a week for the last 10 years and none of you guys have joined us. I don't know what's wrong with you people. We've
Uh,
been
I,
trying.
I want to clarify something for the four people that are watching. Um, what Anish means when he says that is that he's printed out pictures of the
That's
rest of the Boiled Sports crew and
that's right.
has taped them on dolls. I don't want to get into it because it's just weird in his room. And then he hosts this podcast. The mic's not plugged into anything.
That's right.
And then he complains to us about our participation.
That's right. By the way, Justin is here. Hey, J Money, how are you? Oh, great response. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Boiler Down, how are you doing? It's great. See, it's not insane. Things are fine.
It works. It's fun. Yeah, things are great. So yeah, well, welcome. This is though. Is this the second one or is this the first one that we've
This
done?
is the first one since I think the last one that we did previewed a certain Sweet 16 game. So who knows? Who knows? We haven't done this in a while.
We haven't done it in a while, and you know what? To everyone who might try to make fun of us for that, I say, listen, you get what you pay for. And
you you get what you pay us for. Cheers, everybody. Cheers
cheers.
to a very stressful Purdue win. As always, it's always great. It's always great when things are this stressful. And actually, that's not fair because the last couple games have been boring, if not
Mm,
very pretty blowouts. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the stress level has mostly been like, Purdue can play a lot better than this. What's going on?
Do you think they look tired? They look.
Well, you're
Up,
for
up,
you're
up, up, up. Shit.
the internet at Michael's ranch has has lapsed.
So
His satellite dish internet is not going well. What's up? You're back.
I'm back. Did I freeze out there for a
Yeah,
second, or did you hear
yeah,
a lot
you're
of
good.
noise?
You had a great question. You at least very much you looked like you had a great question.
My question was, did they look tired to you?
I was tired from watching so
Mm,
many games so quickly, so I assumed that they were tired too. Like yeah, the only way that I notice is when Zach has these dips, which is kind of crazy because the biggest question going in was like, does Zach Eady have the conditioning for this year? And I don't typically notice when it dips, but like there was that around the 10-minute mark, in the second half when Zach was like, yeah, no, we're done. Like I'm done playing around. And he
mhm,
went kind of back up to his normal production level. So because like I only notice when he swings back up,
mhm.
like it wasn't noticeable, but when you see those swings, that's when you know, huh, it's dipped a little bit. That's strange.
That's
A lot of
fair.
these bunnies weren't going in. A lot of, I
Yeah.
mean, like what 20% 3-point shooting, 20 less than that
Yeah.
today. That's
Started
bad.
off started off pretty good and then really just started throwing up some bad shots. I think I didn't quite notice it as much with Edie as I did the other
Yeah,
players on the team. I think when you get to the point, and Purdue definitely experienced this in the second half, where you're making crappy passes and you're sort of trying to bail yourself out with like that sort of that to me is that's an indicator that you're not firing on
yeah.
all on all
There were good looks today, though, right? So getting lots of good looks, like a lot, like Caleb first for the most part. I was very happy with kind of making like I love his baseline cuts. I love his off ball cuts. Making himself available. Zach hits him every time. Um, Kind of on the offensive glass, he does well, but a lot of those baby buckets didn't go in, right? About like 3 or 4 of those, which is 6 to 8 points that just weren't on the board, just really easy ones. Braden Smith has been wonderful. Again, we're only
Mhm.
talking about the game today, and then we'll kind of pivot to the rest of the season. Braden Smith, I would say, did not like had reverted back to one of those kind of freshman second halves that he has had. He had a few really nice alley oop attempts with Zach, like drive and oop kind of things, draw the help. But man, he just there were times when he had either a clear opportunity or at the very end of the game, there were 2 minutes left. Like he was going for the layup, but like you said, he was probably a little tired, didn't have that extra boost in his legs,
Yeah.
and short armed the layup, right? As opposed to that's the kind of time in the game when offense isn't on going on all cylinders. Purdue just needs to bleed out the clock. That 30 seconds bleeding off the clock is a lot more valuable than the attempt, right? And the attempt missed, and all of a sudden you neither scored nor, wasted 30 seconds. And these are the kind of things where it's like you expect freshmen to hit a wall, and he's not hitting a wall. But this is the price you pay. Like these are the tiny little mistakes that are there. That maybe fatigue is the reason for it, right?
So something interesting. So Purdue finished the game 2 of 13 from 3 after starting 2 of 3. So they hit 2 of their first 3 threes. This was at, like, the 10-minute mark, 10:30, something like that, and then didn't hit another 3 for the rest of the game.
It seems bad.
That is hard, I mean, I think that, there's it's hard to win a game if you don't hit a 3 for
Hit
3/4
shots.
of the game.
Yeah,
You gotta hit shots. So, sometimes when I see stuff like this, though, I feel more encouraged than discouraged because it's like, "Hey, man, this is a team that has shown that it's can find a way uniquely to go after, and get a win." So,
that's a I mean, get in the mud, right? Like these are the type of in the mud games that you want to see Purdue win. Like it is very much a. I think a lot of these guys have learned. Like a lot of these guys are. While it's a we've called this a young team, but
Mhm,
these are outside of the backcourt. These are experienced players, right?
mhm.
And so it's like you like and also it's just the demeanor of Zach is where everybody seems to draw the energy from. And Zach has never, I don't think I've seen an instance this year where Zach has been mad or out of control or like not just calm and steady. Right. And
Yeah.
that's a huge difference. That's a huge difference. Not, we always want to make the comparison to last year. No center has been like this for Purdue. Like no centerpiece has been like this steady, this calm, this reliable. What was Zach's? Do you have Zach's line from today?
I do. He had a pretty I mean, he was 33 minutes, 24 points, 16 rebounds.
Pedestrian.
But interestingly enough, 5 turnovers, which
Yeah,
he's been
which is
solid this year in making great choices, and, these all came on passes that he probably should at least the ones that I remember, that at least he shouldn't have made.
especially in the second half where
Mhm,
it's he's usually so good at it, and this is also where credit Trevion Williams. This is probably where he took a lot of kind of inspiration from that post up cross court to the weak side corner 3-point shooter pass or
not
corner
quite as
wing.
bad as Trey with the skip pass.
and
Trey loves
and
him a skip pass.
he loved a skip pass, and Zach has gotten really good at it. But today in the second half, man, a lot of those he just missed seeing the Maryland defender just right in, the Maryland wing just right in the path of it. Leads to a fast break opportunity, leads to free throws for an easy layup, right?
And
Um,
that's the other thing, like, with I think it was 8 turnovers in the second half, something like that. I felt like all of them led to either a layup or foul, or a foul in the act of shooting. I mean, these were bad, like, backcourt turnovers for the most part. I mean, Maryland would get the ball and they'd be 2 on 1, 1 on 0. And these are not outside of the Morton absolute hammer of a block followed by a inexplicable call by the refs that gave Purdue the ball. I mean, Morton had the ball and then stepped out of bounds, and somehow that's Purdue's ball. I don't know how that works, but those turnovers were absolutely killer.
Yeah, I mean, and so a lot of people were saying, like, so bringing up Paul S's comment here, like pressure and the inability to fight it rushed a lot of bad shots. Do you think this was the pressure? Because I actually don't like. I know a lot of people are saying it was 10 minutes into the game is when Maryland started to switch to the full court press. And that's when a lot of turnovers happened. That's when kind of a lot of this kind of disorganized things happen. I I have seen Purdue flustered by the press, And I don't think this was. I think this was just like shots weren't going, like a few bunnies weren't going down, and even even when they broke it, the half court sets were just a little bit lagging, which to your point may be the fatigue thing. 3 or 4, whatever, 4 games in 8 days or something like that, 4 games in 10 days, is that what it is? And so like
Four
that's
games in like, yeah, 9 days. So
yeah.
I think that the press, the only person who I saw really affected by the press was Lawyer, who made a couple weird choices in like dribbling
Which is
backward,
rare.
which is where
This
he also should have been called for an 8 seconds at one point, but barely got it over. Okay. But I
it,
think actually what the pressure
he
that got to Purdue, well,
Yeah, he didn't get it over. By the way, I was yelling. Nobody was calling it. There were 20
he should have
seconds
been
left on
called.
the
Yeah.
there were 20 seconds left on the
Yeah,
shot clock.
I know, I
It's like,
know. It was
what?
real bad. These refs were awful. But what I think the pressure that affected Purdue the most was not the full court pressure, but I think it was, and the announcers actually made a point of this, which is Maryland was switching zone man to man kind of frequently, more frequently than you would expect. And you have to Purdue wasn't doing a great job of adjusting to that.
Yeah,
And maybe if a couple extra seconds are taken off the shot clock because you're having a little bit of a time getting the ball over half court, maybe that throws the rhythm off. They didn't look like they were really in rhythm. And then when you don't hit a three for 3 quarters of the game,
it seems like that's an issue. I mean, yeah, there are more people. I mean, pretty much everybody, was in on this. The threes being an issue, but um, when man, like I feel bad saying this because Brandon Newman had, I think, a good game outside of this. He's had a good stretch outside of this, stretch of games outside of this, where he's using his length really well. He's coming off the bench. He's playing with energy. Um, I am not concerned with, his happiness or anything like that. Like he seems to really like playing here. Same thing, Ethan Morton. Like he starts because he's Purdue's best defender. He's easily Purdue's best wing defender. He's
yeah,
got such length, strength. He can be thrown on anybody 1 through 4, like, and can handle it really well. If one of them had David Jenkins, same thing. David Jenkins is so smart. He is like 27 years old and he has the frame of like an adult.
yeah, I'm
And
surprised he's not out there with like goggles and knee pads. Yeah.
so like all of them defensively are really good and none of them have, like all three of them have struggled to have a consistent three
It's
point
been
shot
it's
this year.
been interesting with Morton because I know he can shoot,
All
but
three of them, I think they can. I mean,
well,
like,
yeah, but
Gillis too. We were talking about this on the sidebar. Like Gillis was a 40% 3 point shooter last year, and because to your point on the chat, because his shots selection, might, or
Mhm,
his available shots might be different this year.
yeah,
He's his it's sub 30, I think, this year.
they weren't running any action for him last year. His job was to leak out to the 3-point line, catch and shoot, rather than having some action on the court to free him. I think that Purdue has to find a way to get opportunities for these guys to shoot. I said Morton took at least 2 shots that were, "Hey, I gotta get this up before the shot clock expires," shots, and that's not putting someone like that in a position to build confidence or be successful. So, you gotta credit Maryland. Maryland leaned into their advantages. Reese had just an incredible game, just played out of his mind, and they played tough. And guess what? Like even if it's a home game, even if it's against a Maryland team that's really not had a great go of it lately, like you're gonna struggle. 19-1 is great, but there's no perfect. This isn't that Kentucky team of a few years ago where some of the more I mean, you're gonna have some. You're gonna struggle even on nights where you win.
I
So you
mean,
just have to accept that.
college basketball is a meat grinder this year, man. I mean, like there are even the top tier. If you count Kansas, like Kansas just got waxed at home, right?
Mm,
Which doesn't happen, right? Uh, Houston has been really good. Alabama has been good. Purdue has been good, but like, there's no juggernaut here. In the Big Ten, Purdue's clearly the best team, but that doesn't mean that Purdue is perfect, right? So, yeah, there are a lot of causes for concern, but it's not um, it's not a reason to panic because Purdue has all of these. But I think this team has the ability to weather the storm, which is really good. I think there was a quote here. I think Boilerman had a pulled one from Painter's press conference, which is, if they're not going to call it, then we have to play through it better, right? Which gives us an opportunity to
Yeah.
talk about, again, we're not, this is not the fault of the refs. Like this stretch of a little, meaning this stretch of bad Purdue offense,
Oh,
probably the
sure. Yeah.
last 5
Yeah.
games, is not the refs' fault. So Purdue should be able to play through it better. However, there is a crisis of refereeing when it
Yeah.
comes to the Big Ten. We'll focus on Big Ten football or Big Ten basketball, but Big
That
Ten
too.
football,
That too.
but the Big Ten football is not much further along, right? Like there's no coordinating official for Big Ten refereeing, and Boiler Down makes this point excellently on every quick guess that he does. It is, I don't think that it is, he talks about it
Hmm.
as the Big Ten wanting, like actively wanting this style of basketball. I don't think so. I think they don't care.
Yeah.
And so when it gets dragged down into the mud, there's no prevailing things. The NBA had this problem about 10 years ago,
Mhm.
and now if you and they tweak the rules, train the refs, and now the worst offense in the NBA is averaging 1.1 points per possession.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to get like nerd out on how insane that is, but
Mhm.
1.1 points per time you touch the ball is nuts.
Yeah.
And so the NBA has the ability to read and react, right? The basketball is not, in other conferences, in college basketball, is not refereed this way. However, the Big Ten loves a brawl, like, and so the teams, and if the refs aren't given the mandate to change that, the teams will drag these games into the mud. And then once national stage comes along, all of a
Mhm.
sudden you get called, like you're in the double bonus with 10 minutes, 12 minutes left in the game.
Playing the
It's
same style. So I actually think that, I mean, while I don't disagree with what you're saying there, I don't think that, I think the an issue that's just like on that level of problematic is consistency. It's not
mm,
necessarily that they are always calling it as a rock fight and therefore they always get a rock fight. There was a period in the first half where Maryland was hugging, pulling, elbowing, pushing Edie around, and those
and
calls were being made.
yep.
And then, like, a switch flips. I'm not sure where the switch is, who's in control of the switch, or whether it's on, like, a timer. But then, like, nothing, and then you get nothing for a while, and it's kind of like, okay, how are you expecting these teams to play? If you're gonna call it a rock fight, call it a rock fight. If you're gonna leave it open, leave it open. But what's up with this calling it one way for the first 8 minutes, and then for the remaining 12 of the half, calling it a different way? I love that you brought up the NBA, because one thing that the NBA did when it came to officiating is that they hired a bunch of
Mhm.
new refs. There were a lot of OG refs hanging around the NBA who were down there for the 90s. They went out and they spent a lot of money and they hired a bunch of new refs and they trained them the way that they wanted them to be
And
trained.
on the other side, they took the old refs who they liked and moved them into that kind of who
Yeah,
are still,
yeah,
but who probably shouldn't be on the court, and put them in that off the court, like, viewing things from a bird's eye view,
yeah,
and like talking about where basketball needs to go.
yeah.
Um, this is, but the Big Ten doesn't even have anybody doesn't have a go-to person to talk to when it comes to basketball refereeing. So it's like football has this, but basketball doesn't, which is why all of these teams want to bring it down into the mud, and nothing. There's no counterweight to get it out.
Well,
Um,
because that's the best way to win. The best way to
yeah,
counter a talent disparity
yeah.
is to make the game gross, right? It gives you a chance.
It's
And I don't even
the
know if there's like,
mid-major way of playing, right?
mhm,
You drag the game into the mud, and then you have Ali Farokhmanesh hitting, going lights out from three. This is the mid-major, tournament thing.
way to
Dude, I will
that's the
talk about
first time
Ali.
his name has been uttered in how many years?
Dude, I will talk. I think about that Ali Farokhmanesh shot like once a week, man.
I
It's so good.
remember being in my car driving, listening to that game on the radio, and the announcer is just completely losing it.
It's amazing.
So, what do you think? Do we learn anything from this game, or do we just kind of move on? I'm kind of in the latter camp, but want to know what you're thinking about
I
it.
am concerned with 3-point shooting. If we'll probably get to this later, but it is you're trying to win games like this to win the Big Ten, so that this 2-year stretch, which we thought the 3-year stretch would be the Jaden Ivey
Yeah.
kind of era, and it's actually turned into the Zach Edey era, right? You're kind of hoping you win one Big Ten championship within this Zach Edey window. Zach becomes kind of officially, I think, Painter's best big that he's coached, which is wild. You want him to uh, put together all of these accolades. You want as high of a seed, a 1 or a 2 going into March. Purdue will probably take one, 2, 3, 4 losses, between here and the end of the year, but that's okay. Just win the Big Ten, set up for a top 2 seed. And so Purdue is well on pace for that. So from that perspective, yeah, sure, it's nothing to worry about. But then if you look ahead as to, okay, assuming we get there, what are the major causes for concern? This like bad 3-point stretch is like
Mhm.
really concerning to me. And there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do except like hope for them to go in. Apparently, these are good shooters. We all have these expectations. We all know that they're good shooters, but you know, the easy response to that is if they're good shooters, why aren't they shooting good? Like,
I
it's
mean,
really concerning. So
you know, to paraphrase, like you are what your record is. You're as good as your 3-point shooting. We're far enough in the season where
yeah,
the most generous thing that we can say is that Purdue is a bouncy 3-point shooting.
inconsistent. Yeah,
We're and that's and that has not held the team back from winning 19 out of the first 20 games. But this schedule is a little terrifying because they get a little bit of a break until Thursday, and then they have another 4 games in 9 days stretch, and
nuts.
it's the toughest stretch of the season. It's at Michigan, home against Michigan State, home against Penn State, and then finishing up on the 4th at IU. And I'm looking at that IU game, and IU has sort of figured some stuff out now. Like that could be an ugly game for Purdue coming off of the
I would
second
chalk.
4 game and 9 game stretch in a month.
It's not going to make Purdue fans happy. Chalk
It's
that up as a loss. Like both a schedule and a quality of opponent. At this stage, and also that's IU's championship. Like like I don't, talking nonsense about IU is what I do professionally, but
mm,
like IU cares about nothing more than beating Purdue this year. That's it. I mean, like they're not going to like this isn't quite a team that can make a run. They're not going to win the Big Ten, so they just want to derail Purdue season, which is fair. Us being haters, we would do the exact same thing, but they're going to be up for that. And to your point, Purdue is going to be as gassed as they were today, and
yeah.
not in Mackey Arena. They're going to be in Assembly Hall. So I would chalk
against
that up as a
against a
loss.
team that's pretty talented
Yeah.
and has started to sort of figure some stuff out. So I'm worried about them maybe dropping 2 out of the next 4 games.
It
Not
three
the
and
end of the
one,
world.
3-1 in that 4-game stretch, and you're feeling good. 2-2 is
Feeling really
probably
good.
that line.
If they
Yeah.
go 3-1, I'm feeling amazing
Yeah,
about that
totally. I mean,
because
19 and 1. 19 and 1 right now,
yeah.
which
It's
is
hard,
nuts.
it's I mean, we're here, we're talking about Purdue, so we have to talk about, like, things that we like and things that we don't like. But at the end of the day, we are we're fans of a team that's 19-1. And Mo Hill 93, I'm sorry. Like, I can only be who I am.
Mo Hill 93, what's going on here? I came for down. Very, very, I mean, very understandable.
I mean,
Uh,
talk about, like, an ice pick to the heart there. You know what I mean? Just, like, right between the ribs and then just, like, turn it up a little bit.
Listen, man, you're not wrong. Boiler Dad's quick casts are the best Purdue. I mean, like, I think, we're a little bit biased here, but the best Purdue kind of daily or, weekly content that
Yeah.
is out here. So, like, what are you doing if you're not watching it? I
I
get it.
mean,
I
watch
get
it
it.
for nothing else other than those spectacular glasses that he wears.
Exactly. Exactly. You
He
can
looks
punch
very
him
put
right.
together. We
You
don't
can
play
punch him right in the nose, and the glasses aren't gonna do anything. It's fine.
we don't look as put together as Down.
It's true. It's
So,
true.
I haven't had a haircut in months. Um, so sorry, Mohil. I apologize for just being who I am and not who you want us to be.
So, we were talking about concerns. Type Vic one says concern a mid major with a dynamic guard and pack line defense. I mean, so again, this is kind of the fear that it's been since. I mean, it's been 10 years now, right? It's been 10 years since the Arkansas Little Rock games, the Cincinnati game, the Cincinnati upset, the North
Texas.
Texas Texas Tech. Well, Texas Tech, I blame on Isaac Haas's elbow, but yeah, Texas Tech. And then last year, St. Peter's. Like these are, it's 5 games, 5 disappointing tournament losses, or at least 4.5 is a trend. Yeah, that's for
You
sure.
know, honestly, I'm not scared about.
No.
I'm because, and the reason why is Edie would have 30 points before halftime. I mean, typically, yeah, that's a great way to beat Purdue, but Zach Edey has not let himself has not shown any weakness against smaller opponents, and the dude can hit free throws. So yeah, the other thing that I will say is Purdue's on-ball defense with these like dynamic guards is as good as I've seen since the No Gel Eastern days. So
I mean, yeah,
I'm a
like
little less concerned about that.
so let's take a step back here. I know you're the quarterback today, but let's take a step back here and let's
Yeah.
talk about it. Let's talk about Zach and the two freshmen. Um, the easiest question right now, just to kind of reflect on the season. This is, Braden Smith has been great. Fletcher Loyer has been great. We're going to talk about them. We're going to gush about them. Is Zach Edey the best big that Matt Painter has ever had?
Yeah,
We
I think by a million miles.
a million miles. So who's
Yeah.
two? Like two is
It,
probably
Swanigan.
Caleb Swanigan's sophomore year, right? I mean, like Caleb Swanigan's sophomore year is the standard that
You know,
every other Purdue big
maybe
is
not by a million miles, but I will say the thing that Edie has brought that some of the other bigs in the Painter area haven't is he is like steady as she goes. Like
held.
every night, you're getting a double double out of this guy. And you know, even Swanigan had some times where he struggled to sort of put it together, but he had fantastic sophomore season. I'm not doubting that, but I'm just saying that Edie is just high level all the time. Have not seen him have a bad game yet. And that is so hard to do. And it's for me, a huge differentiator between, great players that Painter has had and all timers, which
Hmm.
he is quickly becoming.
I mean, player of the year, right? I mean, and Swanigan was a first team all NCAA, first team All American. I think Jawan Johnson was also first team.
I
And
think he was
was he
second.
second team? Okay. Um, his senior year, I thought he may have been, but anyway, but Biggie, or I mean, Edie is going to be, at least, if he doesn't get hurt, if he doesn't, if he keeps performing even, 90%, 80% of this efficiency, he's going to run away with both Big Ten Player of the Year and National Player of the Year.
By the way, Juwan Johnson was a consensus first team All American.
Yeah, his senior year, he was consensus first team. The VC. Speaking of, pack line defenses with, a dynamic guard. Hey, that VCU loss might taint Joan Johnson's memory in our head, but JJ's senior year was incredible. Uh, you've got, um, uh, after, let's honorable mention to Sandy Marchuch. But after him, we got Haas, you've got Harms, you've got
AJ.
Trevion, AJ, Biggie, and it's like all of these are excellent. And then before, oh my gosh,
You can
it,
divide that set into two groups. They're not all excellent.
I think they are. I think they're in terms of college basketball centers. Everybody except the Blue Bloods would have loved to have them. Even AJ. Like I think AJ on pretty much any other team would have been kind of one of their centerpiece pieces, right? Um, it was just that team was AJ and surrounded by AJ and Ray Davis and not that many great players around them, right? Um, and d- to his credit, that's what I often say. Like, he's that Mendoza line, right, of Purdue bigs, where
Yeah.
if you're worse than him, which I think, shout out to Matt Harms, but Matt Harms was like, you're not on that list. But if you're better than him, his senior year, that Big Ten of his senior year is also like, it was that line. You must be this good, and that stretch saved Matt Painter's job here, right? Like, that is the stretch that if they would have continued to tank, and it was almost single-handedly AJ Hammons that turned that around. And so we've gone from, in what, like less than 10 years, that to this a very similar style, tweaked around the edges in terms of personnel, and that personality test, personality fit, kind of recruited around him, around the big, an emphasis on 3-point shooters, and the best big that Matt Painter has ever had. And that's how you get this. Like, he's so steady. Caleb Swanigan, would go off sometimes, but also he would have games where it was like 30 attempts. A few of them were wild, a few of them with those crazy 3-point shots. And it's
Yeah.
like, because he's a super talented, work hard dude, but sometimes teams would be able to get in his head. And you know, just like, he's 20 years old, 21 years old, like,
Yeah.
it's totally understandable. They try to win it themselves. Like, Zach, just to your point, just
Has
doesn't have that gear. Like,
has
he doesn't leap.
Has Edie taken a bad shot this season?
No,
I
no,
don't think
no.
so. I don't
Wow.
remember any. Swanigan, who I loved watching play, you could always count on him having 2 to 3 just like, "Oh my god, what are
It's
you
and
doing?"
the guard version is Boogie, is Carson, where it's just like, sure, Carson can take it over, like, you can take over the game, but the cost of doing business is a few of those, like,
Yeah,
wait
yeah,
a
yeah,
minute,
yeah, that's the tax that you pay
it's
is
it.
he might dunk on an IU guard in Bloomington and then do the flex after and do the
Yeah.
that greatest play. I just love that so much, but he might also, like, decide to shoot himself out of a slump by
Yeah.
jacking up 28 footers. Like, that's sort of
Yeah.
what you get, you know?
It's the cost of doing business, right? It's
Yeah,
tax.
it's
And
the
so, but you don't like,
what's the
that
tax
is
with Edie? There's no
that
like,
is
that
such a great question. Like, the worst, he hasn't taken a bad shot this year. A few times it's the bad pass.
sure,
Like, the end of this game, the Maryland game, where you're hoping that you would rather him turn around and do kind of the soft, hook,
yeah.
rather than kick out to, the skip pass, right? Um, that
He's made
that
some
led.
bad passes, but I've not seen him make a dumb pass.
Mm-mm.
Like, he hasn't done, like, the Trey sorta one-handed, no-looking skip pass thing where you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, "Please take that out of your game." Like, no one
And
wants to see you do that. He's
and
never done any of those sorts of things.
Trevion Williams is on that list, where, above the AJ Hammonds line, right?
Mhm.
Where it's like, all of these are really, really, really good players.
Yeah.
All Big Ten first or second teams, right?
Mhm.
And the Big Ten is usually one of the best conferences in the league. At the very least, it's or in the country, one of the most talented in all of the country. And so, if you're a first or second team, all Big Ten, you are one of those guys. Every one of them had that flaw where it's like, what are you doing? And Zach has been just so good. Um, and the one thing I did want to touch here, if we're done kind of praising Zach, which we're not, we could do this for another 45 minutes. But um, the flip side, so college sports is chaos right now in terms of just unpoliced NIL, which I have to go on record and saying, paying players by any means necessary is better than not paying players. Like, 100% full stop. The fact is, the NCAA has completely fallen down on the job, and they have no there are so many ways. We have bandied about 40 different ways. Boiler Down a couple weeks ago had a way to fix this, which is one of them. We could tweak around the edges of that one. There are a million solutions to this. The NCAA's decision has been to be completely hands off with this,
Right.
right? So there are no rules. So you get a player committing to Florida that thinks they're getting $13 million, and they're not on the NCAA payroll. So the NCAA doesn't have to work for it, or doesn't have to worry about it. And then these rich idiots have backing out on their, these usually millionaires or billionaires, boosters, back out on their promises, and this 18-year-old and their families get screwed. It's just so bad. The flip side of that is that we can legitimately question whether Zach Edey, who will probably be only drafted in the middle of the first or second round in the NBA draft, maybe would be better off coming back to Purdue if Purdue's NIL collective could make it so that it's a similar kind of between half a million and $1 million to come back and play. This is the flip side of that.
Yeah.
Like, this is the flip side of that chaos. And so if you're going to complain about it, which I just did, you have to open the possibility to, hey, the fact that these players can get paid and by any means necessary can make it so that players like Oscar Shigwe and Drew Timmy and now Zach Edey really do entertain coming back for one more year because they're making more money coming back and playing in a style of basketball that's much more conducive to them than the NBA is, right? Um, and so that's the flip side. Do you think that he's coming back? Do you think that we should entertain this, or should we
Yeah.
just kiss it goodbye?
No, I think we should entertain it, and I think it has as much to do with style of play in the NBA as it does the NIL. Like you said, the NIL allows for the money question to be answered in a sufficient
Hmm.
way, right? You're going to get paid. You're going to get a lot of money to play basketball one way or the other, so that's fine. I think that I don't think that Edie would go undrafted. The second round is a great round in the NBA draft for GMs to like take a risk. And as crazy as it sounds, like a 7'4" dude is a bit of a risk. Sort of like a slower, like non-stretch five is a bit of a risk. So I think you would absolutely get drafted. But then, and this is a point that Newbert has brought up, it's like, okay, if you don't make that team, are you going to be riding the bus in the development league? Are you going to be like flying all over Europe? Like, what's the, you know, there are quality of life things that makes playing in college nicer. But again, the other thing, I remember being in college and I remember being ready to be done.
Yeah,
And that was like as a student, a college student who is also practicing all the time and dealing with all of that sort of stuff on top of being a student might be even more ready to be.
for sure. And I think Zach probably falls into that. Like, if again, none of us know him, but if you were to think about if I were to reflect on like what it seems like his mentality would be, like he may be ready. And for sure he's I think, I mean, more than earned it, right? And
And I
so
think and I think that he'll get I think to your point, I think he'll get paid. I mean, it's my understanding that, the reason that Jay Money isn't on this call today is that he's chartering his jet down to Florida to meet with some Purdue retirees to put together a fund. So,
the collective needs rich
mhm,
idiots need their
yeah,
need their retreats too. I
he's
think
been a great injection of cash to the Purdue system. He's a bit
exactly.
stingy, but we're starting to work on him a little bit. You don't get rich by spending money, that's what he always says, right? Uh,
Exactly.
but yeah, no, to your point, he's getting paid either way.
And
So
Brian Tico says that he's eligible for NIL because he's Canadian. There are ways to get around that because there are no rules, and none of this makes sense. The points don't matter, and there are no rules, and so it's just there will be a way to. Um, but it may be a little strange. Uh, Oscar Shigwe is kind of a similar case here, and there are ways to if Kentucky can get around it, I think Purdue can figure out a
I
way for
mean,
Zach Edey.
to your point, like the NCAA, and I think this extends to the conferences and even some of the schools, but the NCAA is the best
It's great.
example of this of leadership not wanting to lead, but wanting to enjoy like the fruits of the success that there's an inevitability to the success of college sports for the next like 10 years. You can make every
Hmm.
wrong decision for the next 10, and it would take 10 years before things would really start to fall apart. That's how successful college football and college basketball, and to a lesser extent, the other sports are. So
Yep,
the current leadership has, by and large, and this has been going on for years. I'm not saying they've made every decision poorly, but by and large, they have abdicated their responsibility to lead as often as they possibly could get away with it because they don't have to make those tough decisions. They can still reap the rewards of it. Honestly, like the leadership of the NCAA is completely feckless.
yep,
It's hard to argue that they've done much to really engender like confidence in their ability to lead. And every decision they've made has either been has both been with their backs completely against the wall and in the way that gets them out of having to take on additional responsibility, such as through health and safety
Mhm.
provisions and NIL being the top two in my mind.
I
So,
mean, it's like there are so many ways to solve this problem, and
mhm,
none of them are just ignore it and close your eyes and keep the gravy train running. Like none of them are. And you're
yeah.
right; it's got about a 10-year window. But then, like 10 years from now, is it really that out of the realm of possibility for, at the very least, college football to break off? You know, like Super League college football to completely break off of, NCAA affiliations. Like
Yeah, I think it's unrealistic
it's a I but
because
if there's no leadership, at
yeah,
what point does it become a drag? Right? At what point does Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, Florida, all of Georgia, all of these brands, at what point are they more valuable than their affiliation with the NCAA? And is the affiliation with the NCAA just an anchor, right? Like again, we're talking about basketball here. I'm not sure that the problem with basketball also is that the March Madness is a perfect product. Like it's perfect.
for now until they screw with it again.
If they screw with it again, like it and expand it to 70 something schools or whatever, 80 something or 96, like even if they do that, it's still like winning you're in, type of like winning you move on, losing you go home, upsets galore, a perfect betting and tournament bracket. Like it's a perfect like drawing eyes sporting event. So like you said, they could in basketball, they can make every decision and they still have the perfect mix of cocaine that they will know like they have nothing to worry about, right? And so that's
Until
just
until they mess every decision that has been made around college
incremental.
sports
Yeah, that's
has
it.
been oriented around maximizing revenue. You cannot tell me that they've made any meaningful decision that had anything other than an effect on the bottom line. And so,
Oh
how
yeah.
they're going to screw up the NCAA tournament is that they're going to keep adding and adding and adding more eyeballs, more TVs, more schools, more everything. And eventually you crest
Yeah.
and you've done too much and things fall apart. And, you and I have had this discussion about professional sports leagues and the NBA, but it's my opinion that contraction is never an option. Like
No.
the line only goes up,
Yeah.
and at a certain point, it goes up until it's destroyed, and then something new comes out. I should revise my comment about it being unrealistic for these schools to break away. It might not be, but it's going to be the conferences and not the
That's
schools
it. Yeah.
themselves.
Totally.
So
Totally.
eventually, you could foresee a super conference being created for the sole purpose of creating an entity separate from the NCAA.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, but bring it back to this. Without these regulations, we have this type of chaos. And with this type of chaos, there is the negative side of it, which is all, like number one in my mind are the failed responsibilities of commitment, like two commitments of like not like these $13 million pledges and stuff that aren't
Right.
fulfilled. But on the flip side of it, it is the fact that Zach Edey, Drew Timmy, Oscar Shigwe can all return. Kofi Coburn last year can
Yeah.
all feasibly return because their style, like the style of college basketball, is far different than the style of the NBA. And there are players, particularly bigs, whose style meshes a lot better with with college sports. The
I think
second
that
question,
yeah,
go ahead.
go ahead. I was just gonna say that that in and of itself has shown that NIL benefits. It's not just benefiting the school, but it's greatly benefiting the players. Not just in the sense of they're getting money, which is a benefit, but look at someone like Trace Jackson Davis, who is um, dominant at the college level, right? But is might struggle a little bit in the pros because well, I don't know what his pro career is going to look like,
Yeah.
but he doesn't have to take that bet on himself and leave after his junior year because it's either then or never. He can
Hmm.
come back and he can make a bunch of money and he can sort of hedge against what might be a challenging start to his NBA career.
Yeah.
This also affects the NBA in interesting ways, not to derail us too much, but just as a quick comment. Um, there is a little bit of in the NBA draft world. The draft has always been like this, but it's become more like this, I think, in the last like 10, 15 years, which is youth and potential is greater than age and experience, right?
Eh,
Like in other words, like an unknown ceiling is more enticing than a known ceiling. But with NIL, you're going to see guys who are going to fill out that 13 to 26 draft spot who might stick around for like an extra year, might be a little bit older, might are still going to be great draft picks. And so I wonder how you're going to see this affect the conventional wisdom within the NBA.
I really do think it wasn't necessarily production versus not, because there were very productive wings and guards that got drafted really high. It
Mm,
was because of style of play, right? The the production issue often happens around players like Caleb Swanigan, who still got drafted in the first round, by the way, even though
mhm.
that was probably a like, all respect to him, but the style of play was a concern in the NBA. Trevion Williams, Zach Edey, back in when he got drafted, Hammonds, like all of these players, Haas, were productive in college, but their style of play doesn't fit. And so, like you said, with all of this progression, it's that style rather than the kind of production being um, kind of in college production, but
Yeah.
then drafting on potential. It's going to much more be focused around like style of play. And on the other side of this is like you see a player like Shaden Sharp who didn't need to play in college and is now tearing up the NBA. I mean, like
Mhm.
he's doing really really well. I think he was committed somewhere, and there was some kind of strange, like weird commitment issue or injury issue or something like that. He ended up
Yeah.
not playing, and now he's a perfect fit, like stylistically, for the NBA. Um, and so it's like you're going to see this be a lot more divergent on style of play rather than production. But it is what it is. Let's go to the other two who we have to talk about before we wrap up here. Man, wherever you want to start between Purdue's freshman backcourt, but like Braden Smith has been wonderful. Fletcher
Yeah.
Lawyer has been like a revelation. Braden Smith to me, um, I don't know why the surprise is less, but it was like all off season, and we were talking about this kind of behind the scenes, all five of us, like the the talk behind the scenes about Braden Smith was like they stole something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
Matt Painter almost felt bad because they were like, how did nobody else see this? Like, so we all came into and they didn't really recruit a guard after they lost what's his name that went down to Miami.
PGL.
Yeah.
You're talking about Peck.
Yeah, Nigel Pack. They didn't really recruit hard. They ended up with Jenkins. That's really good again, but he's clearly an off the bench guy. And the communication always after Nigel Pack, slipped from Purdue's grasp was it's Braden Smith's job. And so Braden has lived up to everything that the offseason hype was. And I
Yeah.
think me leaning towards his other backcourt teammate is because I don't think Braden Smith, and this is to his credit, is that with as good as Braden Smith has played this year,
Yeah.
I don't think he is anywhere close to as good as he's going to be. Like
Oh,
you,
really? You think his ceiling is higher?
I think he is so far away from what he could potentially be. I think the problem with the early leaving for the NBA discussions is that he is like 5'10". Like
Oh, come on. Don't make me say what you know I'm gonna say.
he's deceptively athletic.
Yeah. Well, what I'm gonna say is I think Braden Smith is a fantastic player for Purdue, and I think by the time he leaves Purdue, we're gonna be talking about him
Oh yeah,
in some pretty rarefied air.
I absolutely
I will say I'll put it this way: I don't think a player playing or not playing in the NBA is an indicator of success.
a hundred
That's what I'm gonna
percent,
say.
1,000,000%.
So I think that it happened today. Today was when I fully embraced this, but I saw Lawyer do like a little curl jumper inside the 3-point line, nothing but net. And I thought to myself, like, all right, like I'm in on the Lawyer
Oh my
each one
god,
more comparisons.
I
Like I'm
it,
in on it. Like
It's nuts.
it,
I have a like this ball is signed by
I
the
know.
entire class of
Yeah.
that 2011. They are my class. I was a senior in 2011. I came in with the baby boilers. Etwan Moore is my favorite player because of that. Because
Mine too.
I
Mine
think
too.
what in that class he only came off the bench for like 4 games or something like that, and then he
Yeah,
was
pretty
a
cool.
4-year starter for Painter. And young Painter didn't do that. Young
No,
Painter didn't like to do that. And the baby boilers, at the very least, Robbie and Etwan made him do that, right?
yeah.
The
But
only comparison, there are two comparisons in terms of instant production for Fletcher Lawyer, and we can go back to Braden Smith because he's been amazing and he deserves
yeah,
a little more time.
we'll get his time.
But like the two comparisons, the only two guards in Painter's career, like Painter's Purdue history, that can match up in this conversation for kind of freshman impact are Carson Edwards and Etwan Moore. And what are we talking? What? Like,
Well, okay. I do think I I think that we have to draw some lines there too, because Edwards was always like his position was always 1.5,
yeah.
right? Like he was
And
he was a ball dominant, but neither Smooge nor Lawyer are ball dominant.
I
They
think
could
they
both
are
get
a
plays
perfect
off the dribble,
comparison. I
but like
think
here and
we're not allowed to make this, though. It's the cross race comparison. We're not allowed to make this. We're breaking so many rules.
but
But
I
like,
was so hesitant to do so because like you,
he's
Smooge,
perfect.
my favorite Purdue basketball player of all time. Like I would be giddy if I ever had the chance to meet him
Mm,
because he's just been I just loved watching him play. And there are some things that Etwan can do that I'm not sure a lawyer can do yet. But at the same time, like I when I saw that shot, I was like, I can't deny it anymore.
no, I
Like
mean,
this is the guy.
he's already so much more confident as a ball handler
Yeah,
than each one ever was. Each one was good off the dribble, but
yeah,
in open court, a full court press could still slow him down. He
yeah.
also was a lot more robotic. Like I think, everybody, Painter has the mile challenge at the beginning
Mhm.
of every kind of
Oh
summer
yeah,
off
yeah.
season,
Where Zach
off
Edey
season.
runs like a 550 mile or some
Yeah,
nonsense.
you've got to what I think it is. You've got to break the 6 minute.
Some
And Rob, I think was Hummel was the one that always made the joke that the last person kind of like just making it was Etwan Moore. Like again, he's not this athletic marvel, but his shot was so smooth. He was so consistent. He was instant impact. He never got flustered. And while Lawyer doesn't quite have that like inability to be flustered yet. He
yeah,
is a better ball handler.
yeah,
Like he is the today aside, he is the one that helps Braden break presses better than I think anybody that I've seen in Purdue in kind of recent memory. It's like, and I wasn't expecting this from him because all of the offseason talk was about Braden Smith, justifiably.
yeah.
But then Fletcher Lawyer comes out, and I'm like, how am I supposed to watch this and not compare him to Etwan Moore?
With
It's
the thing,
nuts.
I mean, he hits a game winner a couple games ago, right? And the thing about that I loved about that shot is like he wanted it so bad. You could tell from his body language that he was taking that shot. Like that was the give me the damn ball. That was like that was a yeah, that was
Yes.
impressive. Now
And
we
then
do have
his
to go back to Smith for a second though.
Well, and then just really quickly on Lawyer,
Mhm.
even the execution of the dribble, like the game winner against Michigan State, the dribble handoff, the pin down, like coming off the pin down dribble handoff to, from Braden Smith. Braden cuts to the corner, and you get a nice pass to Edie,
Yeah,
where either helps off and Lawyer has the shot,
yeah,
the corner helps and you get it to Braden for the corner three or the entry from there, or exactly what happened. You place it perfectly and time it perfectly just in Edie's cradle, and all of a sudden it's barbecue chicken time.
yeah,
Like the
yeah.
ability to do that almost instinctually is like just so impressive. So it's just, I mean, Lawyer has been incredible. Braden Smith now. I think that, Lawyer probably has a more steady um trajectory, and also probably because of his height, because of his size, he's going to put on some muscle. Like Lawyer's going to put on, he's going to fill out a little bit. um So he maybe end up being a better NBA prospect. Each one more Duncan Robinson, like those kind of players are probably good, comparables. Duncan Robinson, shout out to him, by the way, riding one season to get $100 million contract. Shout out to him.
Not even
Yes.
like a full season. It was really like his. It was really like the last 30 games, playoff included. You know,
But like,
I'm gonna stay away from NBA talk. But
but
I will.
Braden, I like to that. I think Braden's trajectory as a college
Yeah,
basketball like production is off the charts.
yeah,
Like I don't think he is such like he's such a smart player and he
yeah.
has such dumb moments, which tell me that oh my god, when he gets it, it's going to be an issue.
You know what though? But even his dumb moments, I've
Yeah,
never seen him do anything like super egregious. It's more been like, "Ooh, you won't make that pass next year," or
yeah.
a thing where it's like, "Hey, man, if you get within 8 feet of the basket, we're gonna need you to shoot it." Like,
Oh.
we're just unless Edie is just like wide open and there's a clear passing lane, take it to the rim. And
And a couple of these times he broke. I mean, again, we're talking about lawyer filling out. Braden
yeah,
Smith is already a Big Ten sized player,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
He had a couple of those where he's easily able to get to the rim, even when he's fatigued today. And every one of them just should have been an easy lob. And a couple of them, he did that thing where he tried to pass it behind him. He tried to get a little cute. And and you're right, he's almost too willing to be the distributor that, like,
yeah.
man, you're right there.
You're
Or
right there.
like,
Just
man, just throw it up.
their only option is to foul you. So, and you're a fantastic throw shooter, so just do that. And that's the thing that comes with like experience in adjusting to the game. Now, the when in the off season in the summer, we heard a lot about Braden Smith leading the team in rebounds during the scrimmages, and I took that more as an indictment of Purdue's bigs rather than because it's like your guard should never do that. And
Yeah,
we've got height. Why are these guys not doing this? And it has shown me actually being able to watch him play in a college setting that this wasn't
no,
something. This was a guy who just goes after it. Who just really Athletic had a great article about him a couple days ago. This is a guy who's really just going to do his best, and it's been really great watching him play. And you
yeah,
don't expect a freshman to settle a team, but that's what he's been. I keep waiting for the two of them to hit a wall because
I
all
know.
freshmen hit a wall.
Yeah,
And they both had sort of like a couple little off games in December, late December, like one, like, but we're talking like 1 or 2 games in a row.
and
And
honestly,
I
I'm
was like, oh,
hoping that
this is a
it's
pump. It's
I
not the
I, ho-
wall. That might be the wall. That might have been
I
the wall.
I hope it's this next 4 game stretch because, like you said, it times out perfectly where they can still learn. There's still plenty of time to learn from it.
Yeah.
It's if you go 2-2, even 1-3 in this stretch, it's not the end of the world. Purdue started 19-1.
Yeah.
They're just hoping for a top 2 seed. You're hoping to win the Big Ten. There is that much of a gap. It's fine, but like, and
2.5.
then kind of rebound, after that. But like, man, just been so impressive to see both of them.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun watching this team play. It's been a good couple of years, and I'm grateful for that.
I think,
So,
I mean, Brian T was talking about this. They haven't had bad back-to-back games, right?
yeah,
And that's the biggest thing. Like, that's the wall. Like, they'll have bad games here or there, bad stretches here or there, exactly. But it's bad on their scale.
yeah.
They're still kind of starting caliber, and probably both of them are all Big Ten, first, second, first or second team kind of level players, which is wild. As freshmen, it's going to be a problem. The Big Ten is going to hate them so much by
Oh
the
yeah.
time their senior
Imagine
years or junior years come around.
imagine Smith on IU or something. How
Oh
much would you
man,
hate that thing?
it'd be so bad. They don't even know him yet. Oh, they're going to hate him. I love
They're
it.
gonna hate
Can't
him.
wait.
I'm gonna love every second of it. So as we wrap, any last thoughts on this team? What are your like? We're getting into that February time period. Where attention turns to March here pretty soon. Prognosis.
I want to win the Big Ten. I really want the National Player of the Year for Zach. Like he deserves it. Those are the goals immediately, and those are the macro goals. The micro goals, like I just really want the 3-point shooting, like especially off the bench. Like I'm not concerned with the freshmen, right? I'm concerned with the off the bench. Spots 5, 6, and 7 shooting, and so you need them. You need the 3-point shooting there to take up for Purdue to be a real threat, in March. Because Zach, again, we laugh because Shaq always had this thing where bigs should always get 28 and 15, which is an insane thing for Shaq to say because he's Shaq and he doesn't realize he's Shaq. But
Right.
then I
Right.
think
Like a German shepherd that doesn't realize it's not a lapdog. I mean,
every time, like they started calling Zach Edey Shaq Edey because those are the things that he's going to deliver, good, bad, or indifferent. And so I think in the tournament you can probably expect something like that, 20 and 10 at least. But the that difference, in the tournament, which is where all of this is head. I know we all want Zach to win Player of the Year. We know we all want the Big Ten title, but it's that March run, and the difference is whether everybody around Zach can can make those open looks, make those open 3-point looks to make this team ceiling a little bit higher. So
mhm.
like that's my biggest kind of micro worry in the next stretch.
Imagine this team getting hot in March.
We've won every other month. We've won the national title for November. We've won the December national a couple times. The last 2 years,
Tough
Purdue were
in
November
December.
champs.
Tough in December.
Purdue just won the December championship.
Yeah.
Matt Painter is known to win multiple January and February championships, and so
Mhm.
we're just waiting for the next 2 months. Let's go.
No, I agree with you. I think stay healthy, number one seed, win the Big Ten, ED, National Player of the Year, all those things are reasonable. They just have to execute. And we'll find out with this team. I'm sure we'll learn some stuff over the next 4 games. So, all right. Well, thanks everyone for joining.
I love you guys. Good night, I suppose.
I love you too, guys. Good night.
Good evening.
Good evening.